Good evening and welcome to the show On the Spot. My name is Patrick Amara. Tonight we will be shedding a light on matters of democracy in Africa and, to be precise, in East Africa, Uganda and the United Republic of Tanzania. My guest is the chairman of Chadema, the opposition political party in the United Republic of Tanzania, and he's also a member of parliament representing Singida Mashariki. The Honorable Tundu Lissu is our guest. Honorable Tundu Lissu, it's an honor to host you. Welcome to the show. Thank you so much for having honored our invitation to be on the show.
The privilege is mine, and thank you so much for having me. And before we go too far, I was a member of parliament the last time in June of 2019.
Oh, yes.
So I've been out of parliament.
Former member of parliament for Singida
Yes.
Mashariki.
That's right.
Which is closer to Dodoma in Tanzania.
It is about 3 hours from Dodoma.
You are a politician in Africa I have followed for quite some time because of your vibrancy and because of your consistency, but also because of the unfortunate things that have been happening to you. But when you look, you as an iconic leader, when we look at Tanzania, we get the perception of a country where democracy seems to be working because of the periodic change of leadership for the peaceful in Tanzania. But are we hoodwinked by this perception? What exactly is the state of affairs in terms of democracy?
Tanzania.
The perception, yes, we get that perception.
That dangerous perception. And I underline dangerous, because the truth of the matter is democracy hasn't worked in Tanzania at least now for 10 years. There was a general improvement in the first 20 years of multi-party in Tanzania, that is between 1995 and 2015. And if you look at our electoral returns, you can see that the opposition was always growing. After 2015, the late President Magufuli came into office and he declared war on the opposition. And 6 years of him conducting that brutal war took a very heavy toll on democracy in Tanzania, and it took some of us through hell. It hasn't worked. Our elections have now become occasions in which we have to bury people who are killed by the security forces. We are back to the situation where the ruling party now wins by 99.9% of the votes.
That reminds me of...
They are winning bigger than they used to win when they were the only ruling party, when in the good old days when we were one-party state. It hasn't worked. It is not working. It hasn't been working.
So, Honorable Tundu Lissu, what you saying is that the politicians in opposition in Tanzania are facing more or less the same hurdles of state-inspired kind of harassment and violence. How come your country seems to have projected a different image across this continent and across the world?
I think for far too long, Tanzania has enjoyed the kind of international reputation that it did not deserve at all. We do not deserve what the world think of us. And I'll tell you the reason. The reason, I think, is no one really knows what goes on in Tanzania. We are the Swahili nation. Our press is almost 100% Swahili press. Our social media is largely Swahili. Who follows Swahili outside Tanzania? How many people do you have in Uganda who would know what we Swahilis or Tanzania are talking about when we talk about our national affairs? So that fact, in my view, the fact that we tend to be talking to ourselves instead of talking to the world, has contributed greatly to this perception that everything is fine in Tanzania. If you look at Tanzanians, they are very, very friendly, self-effacing, humble lot. And that is the image that you have in the world. It's a very nasty place. Our government has treated us very, very badly for many, many years.
Talking about violence and how nasty it can be, the episode that I remember, for which I can say Tanzania sunk low, was also an episode involving yourself.
Yeah.
When you were shot at.
Yes.
I understand, you know, people tracked you up to your own home and then pumped the bullets in you.
Yes.
Just take us through that, because that is the time when the name of the Honorable Tundu Lissu was all over the world for negative reasons.
Yes.
How do you survive this, and how was it to go through this? I know I don't want you to relive the trauma, but also the viewers want to know how you rise from the ashes, more or less rising from the dead.
I was in Parliament at that time. I was actually the opposition chief whip, and because of that, I was entitled to Parliament housing. So I was living in a government housing compound where ministers, the speaker, you know, big people in the government were living in a gated community. So on this day, on September 7th, 2017, I come out of Parliament at midday going home for lunch. And then I realized that I was being followed by, I couldn't identify them. They were in two vehicles. And, you know, we make a corner, they follow us, we slow down, they slow down. So we knew, my driver and I knew that we were being followed. And we went with them all the way to the gate. As I said, this is a gated community. Yeah. You have to stop at the gate, you have to be identified,
yourself and somebody open for you.
You have to be inspected, you know. On this day, the gate was wide open, and there was no security in sight.
And that's not the usual?
That is not the usual. The place is guarded 24/7. I found it a bit odd, but I did not connect it with the people following me. So we went through into the compound, and one of the cars remained outside the gate. One followed me into the compound, and we drove all the way to the parking lot for my apartment building. Outside on the parking lot, this gunman waited for me to come out. I did not come out. My driver told me, don't go out. Then two gunmen burst out from the back seats of their vehicle with automatic rifles.
Inside the gated community, in broad daylight?
At 1 o'clock in the
lunchtime?
Lunchtime. And they opened from like 5 paces with automatic rifles. And I was...
Oh my God.
It was horrible.
I think that was a miracle that you are even here.
Yeah.
That you even survived.
Yeah, I've been telling people that the age of miracles did not end when the Bible was published. The age of miracles is still with us.
I understand they pumped in you about 8 bullets? 16 bullets.
I was hit 16 times. They pulled 8 from my stomach. I still carry one around the small of my back somewhere. The doctor said it is safer there. It's too dangerous trying to get it out. I was smashed on my hands, my hip, my leg was almost completely destroyed. So 16 hits.
You are like the legendary Egyptian phoenix rising from the ashes.
I rose from the ashes, that is true.
It must have taken a lot of time for you to recover from that, or even the trauma to live with it again. I'm sure when you see an armed man anywhere in uniform or not in uniform, it runs a cold...
I was in hospital for 15 months straight. 4 months in Nairobi, because I was flown in immediately to Nairobi that same night. And
even Tanzanian officials, when you fall sick, like in Kampala, you go to Nairobi, right?
Oh yeah, oh yeah. I mean, had I been taken to Dar es Salaam, as some people in the government were proposing, I wouldn't be here.
Oh yeah, okay.
I wouldn't be here.
So I can imagine a gated community has CCTV cameras.
It had CCTV camera on my building. You know, there was CCTV camera in each of these buildings. There is always security guards in individual apartment buildings. The building opposite me was where the deputy speaker used to live. There would normally be an armed police officer outside. And yet, the police said that they had recovered the CCTV camera from my building, and it used to, you know, basically watch over the parking lot where I was shot. But you can imagine, I have never, to this day, I have never been interviewed by the police. I don't think they even have a file. So it was never investigated. No one was arrested. No prosecution. It's like nothing happened.
Looks like the state, they wanted to take you out.
Of course, 2 hours before I was hit, President Magufuli was on national TV, and he was talking, as he loved to do, speaking to the nation, and in his speech he said, those who opposed his policies, those who opposed the government when it is carrying out an economic war, did not deserve, in his own words, did not deserve to survive. I was perhaps his most consistent and bitterest critic. You know, I had, when everyone did not take him on, I took him on each and every occasion I got the opportunity to. So when he said those who opposed him did not deserve to survive, he meant me. And 2 hours later, I was hit.
As a member of the opposition party in Tanzania, Chadema, when something happens to the opposition chief whip, high name recognition in your country, almost left for dead, what was the impact?
I was the president of Tanganyika Law Society, the National Bar Association.
Oh my God, yeah.
All right? Mm-hmm. I was as big as you can imagine. And, you know, whatever happened was a very serious criminal act. You would expect a national uproar. And there was a national uproar. But we have a government, and that's why I said this image that Tanzania is a liberal, if paternalistic, authoritarian state is totally undeserving. So there was an uproar, and the government pretended as if nothing had happened.
How did that impact on Chadema and the young people who are largely people who support your brand of ideas?
The nation was shocked. The nation was shocked. I must say, you don't realize what you mean to a people until they are just about to lose you. I had never imagined that I was of some benefit to the people of Tanzania until I was shot. You may know I was denied medical benefits, but the people of Tanzania and people from around the world, East Africans, Kenyans, rallied around, contributed money for my treatment.
They did?
Yeah. I wasn't treated by the government as I should have. I was eventually removed from parliament. I was unseated for absenteeism. I was still in hospital in Belgium. But the shooting galvanized the nation, and when I look back on it, I paid a very heavy price But I think, generally speaking, it showed our people that the struggle we've been involved in was very, very serious. It demanded total commitment, and I think that was something positive.
That dark as it may be and dark as it may seem, you know, many people out of your country admire Tanzania. We hear the economy is surging forward. We hear the grand projects being undertaken and completed, the standard gauge railway, the airports and the power dams. It must be difficult for Honorable Tundu Lissu and your colleagues to persuade the people of Tanzania that things are different. This perception and the project that we see.
The perception.
For every opposition politician in Uganda, when they are speaking and criticizing the sitting government, they're like, look at Tanzania. Look at the shining, you know,
the shining city on the hill.
Shining city on the hill. Tell me, this is not true?
They're completely,
I mean, the SGR, the dams,
completely deluded.
The power, the electricity.
They're completely.
Even the size of your economy.
I say this, they are completely deluded. Not all that glitters is gold. Yes, things look very impressive. Do they belong to you? The fact that there is plenty of food everywhere, does it mean it's yours? The people of Tanzania are hurting economically. You have millions of our young people who are unemployed. You have millions and millions and millions of our peasants whose crops they are not paid properly for their crops. You know, the workers who have not had salary increases for decades. People are hurting, seriously hurting economically. So you have if you look at the statistics, they are very impressive indeed. If you look at the projects, they look very impressive. It's all glittery, but it is not necessarily gold. You know, these massive projects have been built by you know, borrowing from, you know, commercial banks, God knows where. And they have to be paid back.
You know, there's somebody who borrows, and there's something to show for what has been borrowed for. And then there's somebody who borrows, and you don't see that. You know, it's a pity that in the administration of John Pombe Magufuli the late is when you really suffered, almost lost your life.
Yes.
But that same gentleman, we're told, and maybe you can confirm this or not, was able to achieve so much in 5 years than what other leaders could not even achieve in 40 years. That there is something to show for Magufuli's 5 years, and there's almost nothing to show for some other people in 40 years.
You are talking of, for instance, of the huge hydropower project that he started. Tanzania is a perpetually dark place. You have perpetual power blackouts in the midst of you know, this is a country that should never have suffered from electricity blackouts, but the hydropower dam notwithstanding, power cuts are there to stay. You talk about, yes, the projects are massive. We pay billions in debt repayments. These are white elephants which are so costly. You know, we have Magufuli revamped our national airline, bought these expensive jets that have been running perpetually on loss. So yes, there are things to see, but it is just that. These are glittering things. They are not necessarily gold.
I'm not going to sit here and expect the Honorable Tundu Lissu to say things are okay in Tanzania. For heaven's sake, you are from Chadema. You oppose the government of CCM. I'm not going to think you're going to massage them and say they are good. You are not.
Yes.
But let's face it. Your country seems to be in a better position. When President Museveni of Uganda came to power, almost around the same time when Nyerere was leader in Tanzania. He had just left power in Tanzania.
Had just left.
He had just left. He left in 95, 85, and President Museveni came in 86. And just a few years later, your country was under the leadership of Mwinyi. When Mwinyi left, your country is under the leadership of Benjamin Mkapa.
Yes.
When Benjamin Mkapa leaves, your country is under the leadership of Jakaya Kikwete. And after him, there's John Pombe Magufuli, and now the female president, Suluhu Hassan.
Yes.
You know, at least every individual would want to leave a legacy of his country. And we see peaceful transition of power, given it's their old CCM.
Yes.
There's something good in that, that shines that Africa has not seen. And we look at you as more or less like big brothers who have taken a step.
If, and this is very important, I think it's a very good question. We have had regular change of top leadership of the country every 10 years since 1985. In fact, we were the first country in Africa to successfully transition, to successfully institute term limits and stick to it. All right, we were the first, and it has held since then. But it seems to me, and it seems to people who look at Tanzania more critically, that the more change there seems to be, the more the same things are. So we have had regular changes of presidents every 10 years. But in terms of systemic change, the country has not moved much. You may want to ask yourself, for instance, for a country that has had that regular change every 10 years, for the country that has enjoyed the advantages of political stability and relative peace that we have enjoyed all our years as an independent nation, what do we have to show for it? How different is Tanzania today from Uganda? Uganda that went through Obote 1, Idi Amin, Obote 2, that went through hell during the first 20 years of her independence. How different is Tanzania from Uganda? Or from Little Rwanda, for that matter?
I was in your country a few weeks back. I had an opportunity to land in Mwanza and take a bus from Mwanza to Butiama, the ancestral home of Julius Nyerere.
His resting place.
His resting place. I actually went to his mausoleum in Butiama.
Yeah.
But landing in Mwanza, and you see an airport, regional airport, far away from Dar es Salaam, or Dodoma, the capital for that matter, and take that road trip to Butiama. You see infrastructure that is there. You see a city and an airport that is functioning, almost about to put Kampala to shame. It's just a regional airport, a regional city in the north of Tanzania.
Patrick, you go to one African city, you have gone to all of them. The last time I was in Kampala was 11 years ago. How far is it from Dar es Salaam, from Nairobi, from Arusha, from Mwanza? It is a typical African city. Dusty, dirty, roads that, the traffic jams are the norm. Millions of unemployed, infrastructure that cannot cater for the millions of people that demand to be served with proper infrastructure. Kampala is a typical African city, like Mwanza, like Dar es Salaam, like Nairobi. So stop beating yourselves on the head for nothing.
Because you deserve better. Honorable Tundu Lissu, we're going to take a break, and on the spot, we'll be right back. Welcome back. You're watching On the Spot. My name is Patrick Amara. My guest tonight is the chairman of Chadema, the opposition party in Tanzania, and former member of parliament representing the constituency of Singida Mashariki, the Honorable Tundu Lissu. Honorable Tundu, it appears democracy, we are seeing democratic reversals, not only in Africa, but even across the world. It looks like in 2025, democracy is under threat, be it even bigger democracies in Europe or even the United States. What do you make of what is going on?
Speaking specifically about maybe Tanzania and our region. Certainly, if you look at Tanzania, democracy has been under unrelenting attack since 2015. The first 20 years of multi-party system in Tanzania were the heyday. We were doing very well as the opposition, and we look at electoral returns, we're doing fine. After 2015, from 2015 to where I am today, democracy has been under continuous attack. 3 months ago, we had local elections in Tanzania in November, and CCM won by 99.9%.
That sounds like somewhere in
they
Iraq,
performed
something like Iraq, or
they performed better than they used to perform during the one-party years, when they were the only party that was allowed by our constitution. They have performed better than.
How is that? How is that even possible?
You can only 10 years ago, when we held similar elections, the opposition combined had 26% of all the seats contested. 10 years down the line, we had roughly 1% of the total number of seats. 1%. And you can only obtain those kinds of results if there are one of two things. If there is a total collapse of the opposition, or if there is unprecedented rigging and manipulation of the election. Now, I will tell you, and you may want to verify, I will tell you that today in Tanzania, my party is perhaps the largest political party, the largest political organization in the country. Now you will say, what about CCM?
Yeah.
CCM is a state party. It is a party that you cannot distinguish from the Tanzanian state.
Sounds like something I know.
It sounds very familiar.
Sounds very familiar.
Something very familiar if you're here. It's not a political party as such. It is an extension. There is complete fusion of the party and the state, and that goes back to the early 60s when we went one party. So Chadema we are at our strongest, and yet we got, in those elections 3 months ago, we got roughly 1% of all the seats. 10 years ago, we had 26%.
So it is
the assault on democracy that I've been talking about. A war was declared by Magufuli in February of 2016. He vowed that by 2020, Tanzania would be a one-party state. If you look at the electoral returns, he's almost succeeded. But if you go on the ground, the opposition is as strong as it has been since the early 1990s.
So if you can, all of you combined in opposition in Tanzania, can only manage to get 1% or even less of the total votes?
Actually, that 1% is, I'm being generous.
Okay, I want to put it there.
The figures are 0.79% for villages and 0.84% for cities.
If you are under 1%, and that's your score in the contestation of power in Tanzania, for heaven's sake, even if you improved 1,000%, which is a Herculean task,
yes,
you'd still be in the doldrums.
Now, I will
so
tell
what kind of miracle will Chadema get to be able...
Before I answer that good question, it's a very good question. I just want you to give you a perspective of what we're talking about here. In Singida Mashariki, my constituency, 10 years ago, we won 47 out of 50 villages that were contested in the local elections.
Yes.
94%. We won 94%. All right?
Yeah.
3 months ago, we got 0. 0. So, now back to your question.
What did you do to your people for them to hate you that much?
We have not done nothing. You know, this is a period I was shot and nearly killed. This is a period we have had dozens and dozens of political leaders and activists abducted and disappeared. These were the times when dozens and dozens of our leaders, senior leaders, were arrested on completely trumped up charges. It's a period when we were prevented from conducting political activity. You know, it's a period when we were taken through the valley of the shadow of death. We survived. We have survived. But going forward, we have to go back to reforming the system, to do what we should have done at the beginning of the multi-party system in Tanzania, create an electoral system that allows free, fair, and credible elections. We thought that we could, you know, prevail using the system that was created for CCM against CCM. 30 years of trying have told us that that was a dangerous illusion. So we are going back to square one. We're going back to the tough business of electoral. But do you realize
these democratic reversals are not just exclusive to Tanzania? That we seem to be in that period across the world. Do you get that feeling?
I wouldn't necessarily agree. You know, Kenyans, you cannot put the Kenyans on the same level as us. You cannot. Our Kenyan friends are way ahead. You cannot put Zambia on the same boat as ourselves. The Zambians are way. Even little Malawi. South Africans have just held their elections a few months ago. The ANC, which has been in power since 1996, was nearly defeated. They have a government of national unity. The ruling party in Botswana was defeated a few months ago by the opposition party after 60 years of being in power. So the picture is much more nuanced than it is described.
Where is the hope for Tanzania from the perspective of Chadema?
The hope for Tanzania is in the fact that the people are resisting. We are resisting. We're not just complaining. We are taking steps to push back. As I said, I was elected party chairman a few weeks ago in January. And I will dedicate my chairmanship of the party to the task of fighting for constitutional and electoral reform. We should do that which we should have done 30 years ago. It is about time. We cannot go to elections again until we have the environment for free, fair, and credible elections.
You know, in North Africa, when young people were tired and fed up of their leaders and they thought are excluded and exploited, in fact, it took even one young man, I think it was called Muhammad Bouazizi, to, you know, burn himself because he was not happy with his state. And that sparked what they called the Arab Spring. And the young people on the street, and they stayed there, and the governments changed. That is nearly impossible in the sub-Saharan Africa. Why do you think that's so?
I wouldn't say it is nearly impossible. It hasn't happened. The only thing is, it hasn't happened yet. Look at Mozambique. Look at Mozambique. Who would have thought that Mozambican people and Mozambican youth would take on Frelimo the way they did a few weeks ago? And now Mozambique is going to have more meaningful reform because the Mozambican people rose up against all odds and totally against popular expectations in the region. So who can rule out the people of Uganda simply because they have not risen up yet? Who can rule out that it will not happen in Tanzania simply because it hasn't happened yet? There are so many millions of Mohamed Bouazizes on the continent, in our countries, that one can imagine. And if it continues along these lines, in which we have economies that are not performing for millions of our people, where we have repressive governments which do not allow meaningful democratic change of government, where governments are so corrupt and completely rotten, and they are not accountable to our institutions of accountability like parliament or the courts, where the courts have become instruments of oppression instead of halls of justice. Who can say that our people will forever bear these oppressive burdens? The time will come. I believe the time will come when our people will rise up. It's just a matter of time.
I want now to change gears, and we look at the project of the East African community.
Yes.
The community that brings us together as a community of nations in this region. You know, do the people of East Africa, from your perspective, even understand the meaning and the importance of the East African community? If I came to Singida, do they know that? If I went to Nyahururu in Kenya, do they know? If I went to Kai in South Sudan, or somewhere in Ruhenjeri, or where I come from in Kenjojo, do people know this East African community? Are they working with the leaders, or the leaders think they're making sense, but they're making sense themselves?
I think there is a lot of work to be done in terms of building our people's understanding of the East African community and its importance. Saying that they do not understand doesn't mean that...
do they buy into it?
Listen, you have to pose the question to them properly. If you ask a simple question, do you know what the East African community is? The vast majority of them will tell you they have no idea. But if you tell them where they get the soap they use for, washing every morning, most of our, bath toilet soaps, bath soaps are coming from Kenya. Okay, we do a lot of business within the East African community. Kenya is Tanzania's largest trading partner by volume. All right, so you have to ask them, where do you think they get their manufactured goods from? Where do they think it comes from? If you put it that way, they will understand. All right, but if you ask this theoretical question about the East African Legislative Assembly, the East African Court of Justice, they think it doesn't affect their day-to-day lives.
From the perspective of Chadema, yes, and the chairman of Chadema, yourself, yes, is this East African Community Project working?
It is working, but it is always, institutions like these are always a work in progress. It needs improving. It demands of us to continually make it work better. All right, we cannot go back to what we were, before 1999. I grew up in the 70s. when East African Community broke down in 1977. I was 9 years old. And I remember that from around that time, I was in primary 2. I was in primary 2 years. From 1977 to 1986, 85, when Mwalimu left the presidency, Tanzania was a country of perpetual shortages of manufactured goods. There was no soap, there was no sugar, there was no cooking oil, there was nothing. We were perpetually hungry because we had closed the borders with Kenya. Mwinyi comes in, he says it is ruksa, it is permitted to, Mwinyi was popularly known in Tanzania as Mzee Ruksa. Ruksa is
authority, permission.
Mm-hmm. And so Mwinyi comes in and he opens up our borders to our neighbors. And today people take for granted the fact that you go to any shop in anywhere, you will find whatever you need. You will find soap, you will find sugar, you will find... I grew up during the difficult years of Mwalimu Nyerere. You know, those were hungry years.
Why is it that my national identity card cannot be a document that can allow me to travel freely in East Africa? The other day in Mwanza, I actually tried out and said I've come on with my national ID. And I said, no way, you have to have a passport and things like this. And I'm thinking we should have gone beyond that. But also, some people argue that if Tanzania was not the seat or the headquarters of the East African community being in Arusha and the Legislative Assembly, that perhaps Tanzania could even have moved. That actually it is Tanzania, which seems to be a big brother and which is supposed to be the foundation of the community, that is the same country that is dragging its feet when it comes to the project of East African community.
Prior to 1977, it used to be said that Kenya was the laggard. Kenya was the one holding us back. Since the reintroduction of the community, that tag has been attached to Tanzania. And I think it has some truth in it.
What are you scared of? What are you scared of?
We are apparently scared of our neighbors. And I think I know why. If you look in terms of regional standards, education, health, you name it, in terms of the professions, in the 60s and 70s we're more or less at par, you know. Since then, we have fallen way behind our regional peers. So a Tanzanian graduate of a graduate of Tanzanian university today, if you ask them to write a paragraph in English, they will struggle. So we were at par with Kenya.
But English is a measure of what?
It's not
a measure of intelligence.
It is not a measure of intelligence. I agree with you. Yeah. But remember, our educational system, the language of instruction in our secondary schools, in our colleges and universities is English. So if your English is rusty like that, and you have spent 10, 15 years in school...
Honorable Tundu Lissu, be fair to your country. Tanzania is way beyond at least these others.
I'm saying that in areas where we should be better, or at least at par, we've fallen back. We were much better, we were more or less at par in the past with Kenya and Uganda. Today we are not. And therefore, we are scared to compete with our Kenyan and Ugandan counterparts in the labor market. They speak better English, they are better connected with the world. We are not. All right? You know?
What about this rapid expansion of the community? You bring in countries, with all respect, South Sudan, you know, Federal Republic of Somalia, the Democratic Republic of Congo. Didn't we rush to accommodate them?
When is the right time to bring in your neighbors.
I now see Honorable Lissu, the diplomat. You don't want to. You don't want to.
No. I'm just trying we're trying to reason together. DRC, Rwanda and Burundi, this neighborhood that borders us to the west, and Uganda to the south and west as well, has been a very rough neighborhood for decades. And left to their own devices, they would tear themselves apart and bring us down with them, because we are neighbors. You don't choose your neighbors, all right? So I think it was wiser, it's a wise thing to try and bring them into the family fold, because they are our neighbors. When they're in trouble, we are in trouble. So I think it was a good idea to bring our neighbors into the East African fold. Today we can travel to Rwanda, Burundi, to DRC. It's a good thing. That does not mean there are no problems. Life is not like that. There is work to do. Things can be improved. It is our responsibility to make the situation better.
See the reality.
Yes.
Our partner state,
yes,
the Democratic Republic of Congo, is facing problems in South and North Kivu, an area which also borders Tanzania. And yet, the rebel force that is fighting there, Kinshasa is accusing neighboring country Kigali for supporting the rebels. These are partner states. You would have expected that the East African leaders would have made somewhere in Dodoma, Dar es Salaam, or Nairobi, and be able to talk the things using our own mechanism of the East African community. For heaven's sake, we are supposed to be in a political federation by now, but we are tearing each other or accusing each other of very serious allegations that involves matters of life and death.
There has been, for many years, and this goes back to the 60s, in Eastern Congo and Rwanda, Burundi. This is a very volatile region, and it has been like this for decades. It demands a solution, and a solution cannot be not doing anything about it. The solution is we in the neighborhood, we within the East African community must do something about it. We must put this madness to an end. We must secure Rwanda's borders. We must secure Eastern Congo. We must solve the problem within the regional setup. The fact that we are not doing that is shame on us. We should be doing better.
You know, there was an East African regional force to bring peace in South Kivu, but that force, Kinshasa told them to leave. But then Tanzania was allowed in to deploy. When conflict flares up in Tanzania, in Democratic Republic of Congo, in South Kivu, then it means the Tanzanian forces serving in the Congo will be forced to shoot at Congolese who are also members of the East African community. It's a quagmire.
It's a quagmire, yes, but quagmires of this nature require creative solutions. They must be solved, because if they are not, the entire region will go up in flames. Who wants that? So, I repeat, this quagmire requires the regional and international solution. We cannot just let it be. It must be solved. If it is too big for the East African community to solve it, we must ask our continental partners, our continental brothers and sisters to come in. We must bring in the international community to assist. We simply, letting it be cannot be an option. It simply cannot be an option.
So what really needs to be done? Because we have had summits of presidents and ministers and chief of defense forces and all that, but it appears there is no solution for now. And this is a problem, as you've stated, started in the 60s, and where some people are maybe denied of citizenship, and there are a combination of many factors. In your view, what needs really to be done so that the Congo can be stable? Because Congo is such a huge factor in this region.
Number one, deal with the questions of peace and security. As I said, Rwanda needs to be assured of peace within her borders, the same as Congo and Burundi and Uganda. You need regional stability. Number two, there are certainly very serious and fundamental questions of citizenship that requires to be tackled and solved. There are millions of people who feel that they have been treated like second-class citizens or no citizens at all. These are citizens of the Congo. They must be their rights of citizenship must be protected, must be secured, and I think that is, those two must form the basis for a permanent solution to the problems that bedevil the region.
Let me also look back into your country. Are you suspicious, as Tanzania, of your other colleagues in the region? That is why you seem to be dragging the feet in this whole East African community project. Because the other day, the Ugandan herdsmen that were chased from northern Tanzania, and yet some of these colonial borders are really imaginary. They're the same people. In fact, they have people who speak the same language as mine in Tanzania. They are called the Bahaya and the Baziva. If I went there and speak my language, I just feel at home. But these herdsmen were chased out of Tanzania. Apparently you're scared that East Africans are going to grab your land.
We need to deal with our own issues of citizenship as well. You're talking of Ugandan herdsmen being chased out of Tanzania. Yeah. We are talking of potentially millions of Tanzanian citizens living around our borders. Tanzania is bordered by 8 countries all around. Millions of our own citizens are denied their citizenship every year, simply because when they go to vote, if they want to register to vote and they are suspected of supporting the opposition, they are told, no, you are not a citizen of Tanzania, you are Congolese, you are Muganda, or you are Munyarwanda, or you are Mozambican. We have to deal with our own questions of citizenship because it's a fundamental problem for us right now, for all the communities that live around our borders, the borders with the 8 countries that border us to the north, to the west, and to the south. And then we have to deal with the issues that arise from being part of this regional bloc. We must find a way in which the people of East Africa must feel East African. We cannot talk of regional integration. We cannot talk of we being citizens of East Africa when the fellow East Africans come to Tanzania. We treat them like foreigners. We have to find ways of dealing with these issues. We have to deal with issues of cross-border communities.
Honorable.
You say about you are Kamara.
Yes.
There are so many Kamaras in Tanzania, I know, all right?
Yeah.
There are many Maasais in Kenya and Tanzania. There are many Kurias in Tanzania and Kenya. There are many Luganda-speaking Tanzanians. The same in Rwanda, Burundi, Mozambique, Zambia. we have to find ways of making our borders work. We have to find ways of making East Africa work for the East Africans.
Honorable Tundu Lissu, I want to thank you so much. You've been phenomenal this evening. What's going to be your concluding remark?
Well, I'm in Uganda for the first time in 11 years, and I must say I'm very happy to be here. There is a lot of work that Ugandan people need to do in every respect. I'm appalled by some of the stuff that I read in Ugandan press, by some of the stuff that I see on television, on social media about Uganda. You need to do better. You are much better than this. You certainly can do much better than this.
Honorable Tundu Lissu, an iconic figure in Tanzania, chairman of Tanzanian opposition party Chadema, who survived an assassination attempt on his life. He more or less like rose from the dead, like the legendary Egyptian phoenix. We could talk on and on because he understands this region like the back of his hand. It has been an honor to host him. Mheshimiwa, tumeshukuru sana. Asanteni.
Asante. Thank you so much for having me.
Good night and God bless Uganda.